Welcome to Pinball Mayhem. Now the moment we've been waiting for. I'm going to show you how I'm repairing this rotted up rusted lip. So it's very common for these games to be all separated like this one was started. And if you saw at the end of the last video, this was kind of voids missing. So what I did with the camera off is I set up my fence, and this is a fence I made for actually fixing pinball cabinets, and I set up my router. So notice my router has a flat side, so we're always going off of here. So I measured from my router bit about 2 3/4. My wood is wider than 3/4. So I want to make a 3/4 inch cut because I want to be wider. Then I had to set the depth. And what I would do is I would set the depth, lock it in, and do a test cut and compare it. So that got me close. I wanted to be high for my first pass. Now, an interesting noise. Okay, so I routed this out by making passes, keeping it this way, remember, not the flat. And you always want to do the far pass first and then come in with a rough pass here and then do a final pass. You always want to do like one last pass pushing against the fence. Now I did have to rearrange my boards underneath to make sure I could get this fence and the clamps in, and always check your movement. Almost do a dry run with the router off, making sure. So the fence is going to be my straight line. So I have a nice straight line here. Here's a scrap of birch left over from the house work. It's harder wood. Birch, maple is good wood. Oak is kind of hard to work with sometimes. It's finished and like I can't paint on finished. It's tall. I have it a hair tall, a hair bigger this way. It's long. I want to sand this down. I had a little bit of a void here I could see after I routed it out. So I cleaned that off with a knife just because I'm going to have to get filler in these anyway. The goal is to get a nice strong lower edge. And even if I don't sand it down to the original bottom, I want it to be a nice sharp lower edge. You can use 1/4 inch plywood, but I'd rather use a scrap of hardwood. If you know a woodworker, say, hey, when you get some scraps, you run some 1/4 inch strips out or 3/16 strips, of the wood before on your scraps you're throwing out. That's probably the best bet. Now it's nice and straight, so that's good. We got some divots here. So that is how I'm going to repair this. Now after this is clamped on and glued, give it ample time to dry, I'm going to then go through and sand it smooth. I got a belt sander that's going to take away material pretty quickly. But one thing I haven't showed you guys is gluing. Also, I did end up using my chisel. I chiseled a little small chunk out here. You'll see when I pop the clamp off. And just threw a scrap of this board in. So I'm actually going to glue this in for you. A little bit longer video. Hopefully, if you've never done any gluing, this will be kind of one more lesson. Now, if you're worried about the side you're clamping to, or it's weak, you want to put a board on the inside to clamp against. I like to have one of these click clamps handy, because what I'm going to end up doing is going to glue this in. Then I'm going to put something nice and straight. You could use a board. I have this piece of steel. And then I'm going to put something another board to help distribute that. So I need to have this close so I could hold that up. And then I'm going to come in with the real heavy duty clamps to get a really tight clamp. Now these, if you have a lot of these can do a good job. I don't. So what I did, just review. I set this to the right depth. I did a test. I set this to the depth I want here based on the measurement, made sure this is taller, and I did a few passes. Now it was a little shallow, so I set it a little deeper, did another pass until I got to exactly where I want. I cut this to a little bit longer than I need, because I'm going to glue it in longer than I need, and then I'm going to clamp it down. Now, I did run the orbital over this as well, just to make sure there was no rough spots that my router was going to catch on. And give me improper. The other thing you want to do is you want to check for nails and staples in this area. That will destroy your router bits and chop them up pretty good. So I'm going to get ready to glue. And what you need handy is not just glue. I've said this before. When you are gluing, this is a time no one can bother you. Can't stop. So if things don't go well, guess what? We're going to be stuck here for a bit watching me. So some paper towel, some water is handy. I got my glue. I got something to put on top of this. This may be too short, so this is just wax paper. Cut it lengthwise. Here's another strip of wax paper. Want to make sure that when with metal, not as big of a deal. Your metal is gonna, we don't want to rip off the wood, but if glue seeps out of what you're gluing, you want to have wax paper there if you care to get a nice smooth surface. So I am going to start by gluing. Open glue container helps. I like to actually start by putting it kind of in the tough to get areas. You notice this little separating here, huh? I don't like that. If anything comes out, don't worry about it. The glue will give a chance to get in. So I want to get glue on both sides. Now, this has been already pretty glued up. We're going to use a lot of glue, and you are going to get sticky. So the important part is that we get a good glue in this corner. I'm just going to run, there's a groove that was cut in here. Not a big deal for what we're doing. It's still going to be stronger than the plywood that was there to start with. No. As I said, you will get sticky. Don't wear good clothes. Who cares about the clothes you got on with this? The most important thing is you got one shot to get this right, and we don't want to screw that up. Now, I just want to make sure that I got a good edge there, because that's going to be my joint. Position the right way. Now, one thing people say you can do, you put the piece on, take it off, look for separation. You know, I look for it pulling glue. It's going to be hard to clamp this both directions. So, I mean, there might be a gap on the top. And if there's a gap on top, that's okay. We're going to use some filler on this anyways. There's a lot of damage. All right, let's put this back on. And this front surface being finished, we don't care about. Another thing you find sometimes, you know, wipe it down. A little bit of moisture or water on their joint will help push that loose glue in. Now I'm gluing on concrete. I don't care about the concrete. And if you drip on the concrete, don't worry about it. Don't start wiping it up right away, because it's going to create a little bubble, a little bead. And when you, see, it would be more useful to have full piece. When you go to take that bead up, you just scrape it off with like a screwdriver or something. It'll pop right up. Okay, so now I'm going to have to keep pushing this in. So now I kind of got this semi-position. This is where the quick clamp comes in handy. Just loosely. The whole goal with this is to get a good clamping. You want the metal or whatever you're clamping with to be a little over, but enough so you can still inspect the joint. And the wood's just, I'm using that because the metal's a little, not, you know, super thick. If I was doing with a thick piece of metal or a large wood, I wouldn't double it up. Cool. So that piece is in there. I'm not super concerned about this joint here, so I'm not really concerned that I can see it. I got these bad boys. Now, as I said, if you're super concerned with what you're clamping to, you can have this prep. The more prep work you have, the better the whole project's going to go. I'm going to clamp that down. You got to watch, kind of, one thing that I'm worried about, I'm not getting any squish out of the top here. Is the wood that, oh, the wood was pretty separated down here. Let's throw this here. And even though I told you that that one is temporary, I'll leave it in there. I don't care. Maybe I'll move it if I need to on the top. Now, glue's going to seep out. I don't care. Not a big deal. I'm out of those clamps. I'm actually going to move this up here. I actually do care about that piece. So give me something to clamp on. Not going to be a bad idea. A little bit of pressure. Sometimes you can over crank it. All right, I got plenty of glue seeping out. Down here, not quite so much. So I'm going to position this clamp a little bit closer to the edge, maybe get a little bit better edge, a little bit better pressure on there. In the end, I can come back and throw a little glue in there. This is the area where you could, when we were looking at the route, it was a little low anyways because there's still a void. So we're essentially putting a nice hardwood lamination, repairing the outside of the plywood, and then we're going to sand this down and then use filler to fill up to it and make it look good when we get to the filler stage. And that's going to be a lot of just filling all around it and sanding it. So that is how I repair the bottom of the cabinets. There's better ways, there may be different ways to do it. Everyone does things a little differently. Like in the inside here, this is ripped off. I could put a piece of some wood in there. I'm not really going to worry about that too much. I'm just trying to make it look good. On the left side of this cabinet, I am going to still take a thinner strip. I'm just going to not so thick of a cut. I'm going to take just like maybe like a 3/8 strip off. I'm going to glue another piece of wood in here, hopefully try to be up to that groove, and just glue that in just to give me a nice crisp edge before I start sanding this all smooth. So that's going to be next after this cures. I need these clamps as well. So I got to give this a probably another day, half a day before I even come back out here. But I think we're ready to rock and roll on that. Paper towel. You could wipe up the glue here, especially if it's on the outside or something that you want to sand down. I'll have to fill in that little part that's separated improperly here eventually. I still got more gluing on the outside here. The insides are now both repaired to where I'm happy enough where it can take filler. I did replace this T-nut, and pretty soon this is going to be ready to do some sanding, some filling, flip it up, and then we can start doing repair work on the top and back. So thank you for watching. Make sure to check out the other videos and stay tuned for more progress on this, and let me know what you think.